and the listeners.
Wednesday, July 2nd. This is Studio 2. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Kevin McCory in for Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
So today on the show, we're going to be talking about aging. A lot has changed over the last 100 or so years. In 1900, the life expectancy, Kevin, was 47.
Yeah.
Today, it's nearly 79. The age of 65 used to be this marker of old age, but that's an invention of last century, right?
Over the hill. That was
Over the
concept,
hill. That was the concept, right? So America is undergoing a massive demographic shift. In 2020, 1 in 6 Americans were over 65. By 2030, that number will be 1 in 5. Baby boomers, unlike the generations before them, they're redefining what it means to be older Americans. And so today we're going to talk about it. Is it time to rethink how we view aging and what it means to be, quote, old?
Really interesting conversation today. Looking forward to that and hope our listeners weigh in. Question of the day, do you feel your age? Has your idea of aging changed over time? Give us a call, 1-888-477-9499 or studio2@whyy.org. Also on YouTube, drop a comment in the chat.
And I will tell you this, Kevin, I'm really excited about this show because I refuse to let age define me.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to be attached to any number because people have these ideas attached to the number, right? And so I wonder if other people feel the same way. And I hope you call us and weigh in, 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@whyy.org. And I love our callers, so I can't wait to hear from them.
All right, before we get to that big conversation, we always do a trio of local news stories. So number one today, we're now in the second full day of the Philadelphia blue-collar worker union strike. And tensions, Cherry, are heating up.
They
with
are.
Acts of vandalism and fights over crossing picket lines. So District Council 33 represents more than 9,000 workers in city departments across sanitation, streets, water department, recreation, 911 dispatch, and other maintenance and custodial workers across the city. And they're in the midst of this work stoppage to leverage Mayor Sherrell Parker into agreeing to a better compensation package. Average union worker earns $46,000 a year. The union says the members are overworked and undervalued, and that pay that I just mentioned is about 140% of the federal poverty line.
Yeah, and everybody's starting to feel it a little bit because those trash pickup days, especially, are beginning to not happen during the week. But according to the Inquirer, on Tuesday, a striking city worker was arrested for allegedly slashing the tires of a Philadelphia Water Department truck. And picketers blocked police officers from entering a trash yard to investigate reports of vandalism. In addition, there have been other confrontations on picket lines across the city that have been posted on social media. You may have seen the videos. I know I have. And the mayor said she's offering the most generous pay bump over the course of a 4-year mayoral term. She says she needs to manage a city budget that's stressed by many factors. We talk about those, SEPTA, schools, so many things. And the city has successfully already won court orders requiring some water department and 911 call center employees to return to work to ensure public health and public safety.
But trash kind of is the fulcrum here.
It is the big thing.
And so the city is saying, don't put trash on your curb and instead take it to these sanitation centers or these kind of dumpsters that they put around the city as temporary drop-off sites. And what I find interesting is it's kind of playing out among neighbors right now, this debate over what to do. So in my neighborhood in Northwest Philadelphia, you had a person say, hey, I'm going to organize trash collection for our block. Like,
taking an initiative,
I'll take it for everybody up to the sanitation center in case somebody doesn't have a car or whatever, it's inconvenient for them. And then immediately you had people jumping on to say, you're a scab, you're being thoughtless, you're not caring about the workers, and him retorting, well, rodents, well, pests, well, public health. And you kind of had this back and forth, as we often see in these internet comment groups. And it just kind of is a window into, I think, how a lot of people across the city are navigating this right now.
That's so interesting because at the end of the day, it is your block, it is your neighborhood. You want to support the workers at the same time. You don't want rodents. And so what do you do? And so, by the way, this is going to be our topic of discussion on the show tomorrow. Kevin and I will be leading that discussion. And I hope you tune in then because we want to hear from you, right? And we're going to hear from a lot of folks involved. So the second story in our trio, big update on a story we had been following. University of Pennsylvania has reached a deal with the Trump administration to limit the participation of trans athletes in sports. Under the agreement, trans women will no longer be allowed to participate in women's athletics at the school, capitulating to the Trump administration's call to adopt biology-based definitions for the words male and female that comply with the government's interpretation of Title IX. They have also agreed to post a statement to that effect on their website. In addition, and this is according to the Philadelphia Inquirer, Penn has agreed to send personalized letters of apology to the women athletes at their school that may have felt aggrieved when Penn allowed transgender swimmer Leah Thomas to participate on their team. Penn has also agreed to restore all records and honors that these female athletes would have received were it not for Thomas's participation. Now, this is the agreement.
Obviously a very, very hot button issue. And this deal comes amid, we've been noting, the Trump administration targeting some of the nation's elite universities, where the president has threatened funding and policy changes if schools don't comply with certain demands. In March, the administration paused $175 million in funding to Penn. And it's kind of an open question right now whether this, you can call it a capitulation by Penn, will mean that money does eventually come to them. That's an open question we'll be following.
Yeah, and by the way, Penn is now the first Ivy League university to strike a truce with the administration, at least on this issue. And, you know, if you check their website, as of Tuesday, Penn had updated its records online, and Leah Thomas is no longer listed as the record holder in 3 events, but they still acknowledge her in italics at the bottom of the page. They say that Thomas set records in the 100, 200, and 500 freestyle under the rules that were in place at the time. And that's being reported on national, reporting sites all over the country. But we'll see if other schools sort of cave in on other issues or change the rules or make these types of deals. And we'll also, like you said, be watching the funding. Yeah. Third story. Cherry.
Yes. What's cooler than being cool?
I don't think anything is cooler than being cool.
You're supposed to say, ice cold. Oh. That's what Andre 3000 would say. A new study published Monday in the Journal of Experimental Psychology says it knows the answer to this question. Researchers surveyed 6,000 people from 12 countries around the world, and they found that the perception of coolness has a certain universality that transcends age, income, education, or gender. Okay, so here are the 6 common traits these researchers say are the common traits of coolness.
Okay.
Extroverted, hedonistic, powerful, adventurous, open, and autonomous.
I'm in charge.
So using this criteria, Cherry, let me try a line out on you.
Okay.
You can tell me if it makes me seem cooler.
Okay.
Cherry Greg, you can't stop me. I'm going to leave right now, drive to an all-you-can-eat and drink resort in Key West. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to follow the road wherever it takes me. You in or you out?
I kind of like that. Yeah. But you know what? I love adventurous people. I really do. I love people who live by their own rules. They refuse to be put in a box, and they constantly learn and grow and change, and they don't get stuck. I like people like that. I think that's cool.
So do you think this is a good list that they came up with?
I do. And I mean, at first I was like, hedonistic, pleasure-seeking people. Ooh. But yeah, I mean, these are types. I mean, I think about it would be hard to get to know someone who is an introvert, who doesn't run their own life, who refuses to try new things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of, you want somebody that, is open and all of those things.
You can kind of see it cutting both ways.
Yeah.
Though, right? An extrovert who's like super hedonistic and exerting their power and their autonomy. You could see that being a very negative case as well. And that's the debate. Like,
that
does
is the
being
debate.
Cool equal being good?
That is true. And our producer Paige said something earlier that made me think about this. She was like, who I think is cool? Allen Iverson's cool. And I thought, yeah, because he didn't even go to practice, okay? But changed the game in basketball, had his own style, and still won. I think about someone like Tina Fey, a woman breaking ceilings, right? Being funny, because, it's just so many people. So many people I could name who I think are really cool, but they live by their own rules.
That's true. All right, if I was going to define it, Cherry, this is what I came up with.
Give me the list.
Simple. Confidence mixed with humility.
Ooh.
Sense of humor mixed with a sense of style and taste.
I like that. Yeah, and being themselves.
You got to be authentic.
You got to be authentic. So I like that. I like the cool rules. And you're pretty cool, Kevin.
Oh, you too, Cherry.
There you go. And so hopefully you'll think this conversation is cool, because coming up, we're going to be talking about aging and whether it's time to redefine how we see growing older. And the big question of the day for you, our listeners, is this: do you feel your age? And has your idea of aging changed over time? Give us a call, 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And I look forward to hearing from you on the other side of this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Studio 2. I'm Cherry Gregg. My co-host Avi Wolfman-Arent is off this week. The first person to live to be 150 years old could have already been born. Now, that may sound like science fiction, but it is part of a real shift we are living through. Americans are living longer than ever. After a pandemic-era dip, the average life expectancy has rebounded to 78.4 years, a full decade longer than it was in 1950. But longer lives raise lots of questions. If 70 is the new 50, what does it mean to grow older these days? Today on the show, we're going to break down outdated stereotypes and look at whether it's time to reshape our expectation of what older adulthood could look like. And to help us do this, we have Deborah Carr, an expert on aging and how social policy intersects with longevity. She is a professor of sociology at Boston University and is author of Aging in America. Debbie, welcome to Studio 2. It's so nice to see you.
It's nice to see you as well.
And for you, our listeners at home and elsewhere, we invite you to join the conversation, because this is a community conversation. And the question of the day is this: do you feel your age? Has your idea of aging changed over time? The number is 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to drop your comments in the live chat. And I want to start with a caller to kind of set the scene. Meredith from Garnet Valley is on the line. Meredith, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
I guess my comment is that the importance of your perception and how you perceive yourself. If you perceive yourself as old and no longer capable of doing things, then you won't be able to do them. Of course, the marker of what you perceive as being old seems to get further and further away as you get closer. But
yeah, do you feel your age at all, Meredith?
I do not feel my age, I guess. You know, there are physical changes that come, but I'm often told I don't look my age, and I continue to be very active. And my husband and I just got back from mountain biking in Nepal, and So you can still be very capable as you age if you take wellness seriously and prevention seriously.
And by the way, I don't mean to put you out there, but our producers say you just turned 60. Happy belated birthday. And you're a mountain biking in Nepal. That is so cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Meredith from Garnet Valley sharing her perspective on this. And so, Debbie, I want to bring you into the conversation because in 1900, the average U.S. life expectancy I mentioned was 47. Today, it's about 79. Many people live far longer than this. So what did it mean to grow old 100 years ago versus today?
Sure. Well, it was pretty rare to survive until extreme old age 100 years ago, although there were older people. It's kind of a trick looking at those life expectancy statistics. A low life expectancy often is pulled down by infant mortality. So we want to kind of get rid of that notion that there were no old people 100 years ago, but people are living longer and healthier today for a range of reasons. We've had tremendous public health interventions, everything from water fluoridation to pasteurization to many strides in improving the environment. But then likewise, our lifestyles have improved. Rates of smoking are down. People are eating healthier. They're exercising. They're doing jobs that have lower levels of exposure to toxics, right? Less difficult or challenging physical labor jobs. So there are a lot of societal factors that are helping people to live longer, healthier lives.
I just love it. But, I want to talk about this 65 number that had been floating around for more than 100 years. Age 65, it became the American threshold for old age with Social Security in 1935. And at the time, a lot of people didn't reach it at that time. But I want you to kind of explain to us, how did 65 just become this number for all of us? Was it anything based in science for us to kind of say 65 is when you're, quote, old and ready for retirement?
Yeah, you're right that age 65 as being the marker of old age is largely arbitrary. It came about for Social Security because it was an age at which, was the average age at which people would retire. But we know that some people retire much younger. We know that people who have had very difficult lives don't have a body that allows them to work at 65. But then there are plenty of other people, professors and doctors and lawyers who have sedentary work. We can stay in our jobs until we're 80 or 85. So you're right that 65 is arbitrary and it's just a number. And in fact, most of us have multiple ages. We have our chronological age, but then, as our caller just told us, it's how old we feel, how old we look, how old other people think we are. So we really need to move away from this simplistic notion that someone becomes old magically on their 65th birthday.
Yeah, I want to bring in another caller. We have Sally from Montgomery County on the line. Sally, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Well, hi, everyone.
Hello.
When I was a little girl, we called my dad the old man when he hit 40.
Ooh.
And I am now 67 and still moving and shaking, even though I have a lot of health things going on. But I wanted to say this. 5 minutes before I heard you guys were on the air, I was with a woman who is of my age, and we ended up talking about her fingers being very arthritic and her hair falling out. She was just diagnosed with alopecia, and she thought both things were due to age. And I went, oh, no, don't think that way. So I called to encourage everybody to not let our medical providers misdirect us or not diagnose us because of age. And I know that your expert there probably has an opinion about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. That is Sally from Montgomery County with a great perspective. And by the way, we invite you to join the conversation. Do you feel your age, and has your idea of aging changed over time? Again, the number is 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop those comments in the chat. And so, Debbie, Sally had a point. I had a doctor's appointment. I'm in my 40s. Go in there. Some things were going on. And they said, oh, this is just something that happens in your 40s. And I said, you got to have a better answer than that. And at every different stage of life, people try to tell you to accept things. Any thoughts on what Sally had to say?
Yes, Sally is absolutely right that oftentimes people will think that, dementia or being depressed or having aches and pains is just a normal part of getting old. And that's not actually true, right? Many people live until 90 with relatively few symptoms, with their mind intact. And so we want to make sure that when we go to the doctor, we're really clear that the symptoms we have are not typical. And that's part of the reason why they require treatment. We can't kind of blithely attribute everything to age. We like to say we have senior moments, but often it's just we're distracted or have too many things in our mind. So I think Sally's absolutely right. We want to kind of challenge this notion that old age equals frail and sick.
And that has been the big, cultural and just societal impression that, old age comes with decline. It comes with withdrawal from society and all those things. And it seems like there has been a shift, especially with the baby boomer generation. Folks are sort of shifting the narrative. Can you talk about how cultural view of what aging means and sort of like the subtle cues that go along with that can impact your mindset on how you see yourself as you age?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and one thing we also need to remember is that some things improve with age, knowledge and wisdom and experience. So getting older is not synonymous with decline. And you're absolutely right that generations, baby boomers and now the aging Generation X, my cohort really is reinventing aging. We see people starting new businesses in their 50s and 60s or running marathons or finding new relationships. And in fact, we see lots of people in their 50s and 60s who have left a relationship that didn't work for them and are dating or cohabiting or remarrying. So I think what the boomers are doing is telling us that you can have a completely new lease on life, new adventures, new challenges, even going back to school at older ages. And frankly, if someone's 65 today and they're in pretty good health, they will very well survive until 85 or 90. And just think about that. At 65, we're not kind of hanging things up, but we might have 20 plus years ahead that we can live out in the ways that we would like to live it, contingent on our minds and our bodies being in shape to do those things we'd like to do.
Yeah, I want to read a comment from Miles from Germantown who says he wants us to talk about the privilege of aging and how people in Chestnut Hill grow older than people in Nicetown. He thinks that some people have better access to health care and therefore live longer. And I want to kind of sharpen what Miles had to say, because you think about babies, right? There's like these milestones that babies across all, demographics are supposed to reach. You're supposed to be walking and talking and doing things at certain stages, but it's different with aging. People can age at different rates, and there's a lot of different factors that go into that. And it goes into what Miles had to say. That's, and demographic, like zip code could be part of that. Can you tell us some of the factors that can contribute to how you age over time?
Sure. And Miles is absolutely right. And in my research, this is one of the topics I write about and actually care about most deeply. Living to age 65 is a luxury for some communities. We know that there's economic disadvantage in this country. We know there's certainly racial oppression. There is climate injustice. And so if someone has the ill fortune to not have a lot of money and they don't have access to health care, they live in a neighborhood that's highly polluted, they will die younger. They'll have earlier onset of health problems, and they might not survive long enough to get Social Security or Medicare. And so this is something really important. There's a huge social justice component to aging. There's also something that scientists refer to as accelerated aging, kind of what you just referenced, that the age at which we start to experience symptoms, everything from diabetes to heart disease to cognitive decline, it tends to happen earlier and at younger ages for people who have faced more challenges in life and reduced access to health care or dangerous jobs. So he's absolutely right in saying growing old is an absolute luxury of economic privilege and racial privilege in this country.
I wonder how much the genetics plays in part. I mean, nature, versus nurture type of thing. You talked about the zip code and what you eat and what you're exposed to, but if everybody in your family lives to be 100, I mean, do you have how much does that contribute? And can you, or if everybody in your family doesn't, how does that change the numbers?
Yeah, genes are very complex. And I know we like to say, oh, I lived to 100 because, my grandmother did. It's good genes. There are a couple things going on. Genes matter more for the health problems that we acquire earlier in life. So, childhood diabetes, for instance. But the power of genes as a risk factor for health actually diminish over time. And one of the reasons is called gene environment interaction. If you're alive for 70 or 80 years, there are so many other ways that the
Mm.
social environment and access to healthcare can kind of affect our lives that genes have kind of diminishing power over time. And that's not to say they don't matter, right? We know there are some diseases that have a really high heritability, right? A very high kind of genetic influence. But a very famous study that was published in a New England Journal of Medicine actually attributes, mortality and survival a very small fraction relatively to genes, and most of the other factors are environment, health behaviors, and access to care. So genes matter, but they're not deterministic. They actually intersect with our environment. And you can have a bad gene, but if you have a healthy lifestyle, that can help to kind of buffer a little bit of that genetic risk.
Yeah, you can beat the odds there. And for our
Yeah.
listeners at home, I invite you to join the conversation. The question is, do you feel your age? And has your idea of aging changed over time? The number is 888-477-9499. The email is studio2 at whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube, keep those comments coming. By the way, David on YouTube says, OMG, by the time we're 150 years old, people will be living until 200 years old, and they just might. You never know. Ruby comments, I celebrated my 70th birthday this past weekend. I am blessed with good health. I work out 3 days a week with a trainer and walk 12 to 15 miles per week. I need to walk with you, Ruby, because you're doing it. And answering the question, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? She says, mentally and physically very young. I want to bring in a caller. We have Kimberly from Collingswood, New Jersey on the line. Kimberly, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
My comment is that I retired early because too many of my colleagues were dying before they hit 65. So I retired 10 years early. And I'm pledged to do two things. One was to do something every day that brought me joy.
Ooh.
But the other thing that's most important is sleep. As you get older, it's harder to sleep, and it takes work. And I encourage everybody to do that work. If you need a new mattress, get it. Follow the advice about putting your electronics away. I use a half a gummy to make sure that I get at least
Ooh.
6 or 7
What's
hours
in
of
that
good
gummy?
sleep a night.
What's in that
It's
gummy?
so important. Yes, it's directly related to how quickly you age.
I love it, Kimberly. And what's in that gummy?
I use the mix of the THC and CBD.
Okay.
And like I said, a half of one does the trick. And, it's not that expensive. So it's worth it, especially if I stayed up too late watching television and really need to get to sleep. It always works.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly from Collingswood, New Jersey, talking about the need to have good sleep to keep you healthy and age well. I love that, and I think there's a lot of factors you can do to make aging better. And I know that sleep can help. Getting good sleep can help stave off dementia and so many other illnesses and keep your immune system strong. Can you piggyback on what Kimberly have to say and talk about the necessity for good quality sleep?
Yeah, sleep is so important at any age, but especially for older people. And Kimberly's absolutely right. There are a lot of reasons why sometimes it's hard to get a good night's sleep with age. If you have more aches and pains, it's harder to sleep. For people unlike Kimberly and a lot of our callers, for those who aren't physically active during the day, it's a lot harder to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then there's really interesting research on, partner sleeping, right? If someone has a partner who has prostate health problems, for instance, and they're getting up and going to the bathroom several times during the night, that will affect their co-sleeper, right? As we tend to call them. And so sleeping is affected by not only what we do during the day, but for those who do have a partner, their sleep habits also can kind of make our lives or our nights more or less restless.
Yeah. I want to get this question that we have from Dandelion Greens, who has been watching on YouTube. Hey, Dandelion. Dandelion asks, can you speak to the idea of aging in spurts rather than gradually? And I've read something about this, that there are sections of your life where you have a little bit of you age, but it's not like you're aging, every single day, but there's like sections. Is that true? Can you
Yeah.
explain how aging actually happens?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't actually seen like hard data on this, but we know there is some developmental periods, like adolescence, for instance, where there's a whole concentration of physical changes. Another one might be menopause. And we know that menopause is a very protracted period. It's not like one day, but it can be as long as, 10 years between perimenopause through the whole thing. And there are periods where you have a concentration of things going on in your body. So that definitely happens. But another is that there are social factors that might make us feel like we're having a whole bunch of age related questions at once. And the main social factor is stress, right? When we're stressed, we get headaches, we don't have time to exercise, our sleep is disrupted. So you can think about sleep as being kind of this rolling stone that's getting bigger and bigger, and we tend to get more symptoms, and we don't really treat them as well when we're having a period of stress. Our diet's not good, our sleep's not good, we don't exercise, we feel lousy. So there could be, again, particular moments where we feel a lot going on, and it's less the aging process per se, but more this kind of range of accumulating factors that's making our life more difficult.
Yeah, I want to bring in another caller. We have Zoya from Quakertown on the line. Zoya, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
My comment is that you really do have to work at enjoying your life and honoring your health, especially if you have it. I'm 75. I'm active every day, yoga, biking, kayaks, weights. I'm still working as a freelancer, and I value my activity and my quiet time as well. Another important issue is gut health. I had very bad acid reflux, GERD, and what I didn't realize is until I found probiotics that helped, it included inflammation. So I was moving like a very old person until I was able to solve that. But your state of mind is important. I have two 90-year-old friends that are very involved with life. They're sharp as a tack. They attend classes and give to the community. And I'm going on Thursday to visit another friend's 105-year-old mother who lives in a facility but is active and even made videos encouraging people to vote last November. So being involved and being active and honoring whatever health we have is very important.
I love that. That's Zoya from Quakertown. And feel free to join the conversation. Our questions of the day are this: do you feel your age? Has your idea of aging changed over time? The number is 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And for those of you watching on YouTube, keep those comments coming in the chat. I want to set something up with you, Debbie, because I want to talk about culture, a little bit of pop culture, and we have a couple clips we want to play because our cultural narrative around aging and how it has really shifted, I think, over the past 40 or so years. I want to play this first clip. It's from The Golden Girls, the show that everybody loved. Thank you for being a friend. Remember that? Anyway,
I love that show.
in this 1985 episode of The Golden Girls, Dorothy and Rose talk about feeling young but not looking young. Take a listen.
I was in the teacher's lounge talking to a group of girls in their 20s. Oh, they were so pretty. At that age, you don't even have to be pretty, and you're pretty. Anyway, we were laughing and giggling and having a great time, and I completely forgot that I was older. I just felt like one of the girls, and we had a wonderful time. And then I got into my car and caught a glimpse of myself, and I almost had a heart attack. This old woman was in the mirror. I didn't even recognize her.
And I want to put this up against, fast forward to today, the show And Just Like That. It's the new HBO Max series, the sequel to Sex and the City. Here where Carrie Bradshaw and her friends talk about menopause in a New York diner. Take a listen.
Well, I think I'm done.
Mentioning it?
No, done. I haven't gotten my period in 4 months, so I think I'm finally in menopause. Welcome to the club. Prepare to be sweaty.
And, I see these two differences. First of all, just the way women looked, in 1985 versus in 2025 or 2024, whenever this was shot. Just sort of our evolution. Has our understanding of aging, our culture, the pop cultural commentary around aging, has it shifted enough to sort of accommodate the extended lifestyles and the way people are sort of viewing themselves now.
Yeah, and it's funny you chose clips from two of my favorite shows that I watch
Yes.
religiously. Absolutely. I think it has changed a lot, having to do with style, having to do with the kind of jobs people have, even social roles, right? Like Charlotte had a child at an older age, right? So someone might be 55 with a fairly young child today, which makes them younger. Oftentimes they'll maybe are the oldest mother in the PTA, but they're with younger moms, which keeps them young. So I think there are a lot of social and cultural factors that emphasize just differences in how we carry ourselves and how we look. But with that said, I'm not wholly optimistic because if you're a big fan of in Just Like That, a lot of the commentary online was entirely ageist, picking on Charlotte, Kristen Davis for having a facelift, and likewise picking on Sarah Jessica Parker for not having a facelift. So I think women can't win. If they look too young or too old, they're going to be mocked, ridiculed, or critiqued. So I think this is a challenge that continues today.
Yeah, and we'll have to talk about beauty and all the industry that has sort of developed around aging on the other side of the break. And, Deborah Carr is an expert on aging. She's also a professor of sociology at Boston University. She'll be sticking with us. And on the other side of the break, we're going to continue our conversation about redefining aging. And when we get to the other side, we'll hear from a local author who is saying, yes, we are old and we smoke weed. You don't want to miss that chat. We'll be right back. We'll also have more callers and more comments from all of you. This is Studio 2. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Studio 2. I'm Cherry Gregg, and we have been talking about redefining aging. And with us is Deborah Carr, a former professor at Rutgers, now at Boston University. She is also the author of the book Aging in America. And Debbie, before we get back to where we left off before this break, I want to remind you, our listener at home and elsewhere, to join us for this conversation. The questions are this: do you feel your age? How has your idea of aging, changed over time? The number is 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop those comments in the live chat. I have Jane from Blakesley, Pennsylvania on the line. Jane, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Oh, yeah, my name is Jane. Yes, I'm 92, and I worked until I was 70. I had 4 children. I put myself through college at night, and my great hobby was also training dogs until I became handicapped in December of 2020. My thing is, all right, I don't consider myself old mentally, but some people seem to take old people as almost invisible individuals, that they're no longer can be interesting. And I find that very hard to accept. I don't know what to do about it, but I find that so frequently, and I don't, as I said, I don't know what to do about it. I keep myself as active as possible. I go to an art class, and I don't sit and look at TV all day. So what do you do about that without being rude to them? I've even had doctors talk to my daughter, who's with me, because I don't hear that well.
Yeah.
I'm
and we're going to answer
person.
Jane from Blakesley, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much. Jane raises a very interesting question that I think a lot of people experience, who they deal with this treatment of invisibility. Your thoughts on this, Debbie?
Yeah, I think older people often are made to feel invisible, and older women often say, in particular, that they are invisible. People no longer acknowledge them or look at them. And I think partly it is ageism, right? It maybe harkens back to a century ago when older people did have very poor health, or they weren't working full time. And I think one thing we need to, teach younger folks is that just because someone looks older doesn't mean that they don't have or had a fascinating career, or that they're well read, or they have hobbies, and that they have something to share. Also, that they're the keeper of culture and memory, right? They know firsthand what happened in history, right, in the 60s, So I think we need to really reinvent how we think about older adults and recognize, yes, there are some age differences. Maybe someone older doesn't move quite as quickly, but their brain may be just as sharp. Maybe they're not quite as present on TikTok, but they certainly have other channels for communicating and sharing their thoughts. So we really need to educate people that it's ageist to assume older adults have nothing to say or share. And we need to get rid of these lame handles like, about the boomer, okay boomer. I mean, that's just plain old ageism.
Yeah.
And there's value for people of every age and every generation.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about pop culture already during this hour, but I want to bring in another guest to talk about redefining aging as we continue our conversation. So joining us now is local author Diane McKinney-Whetstone from Wynwood, and she wrote the book called Our Gen, which is about an upscale 55-plus community located in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Diane, welcome to Studio 2.
Thanks so much. Wonderful to be with you.
So I want you to tell us a little bit about this story and what sort of gave you the spark to write this, because there's a lot going on in this community that defies what people really think about when they think about people over 55 or over a certain age.
Absolutely. And number one, I'm just fascinated by this conversation today because it confirms what I know and what I've lived. That when people reach a certain age, when a person reaches 65, they don't fall off of a cliff from being normal to being this suddenly, feeble, can't take care of themselves entity. So I wrote Our Gen because I wanted to normalize what I feel is normal about the aging process, about being 60, 65, 70 years old. These are four people, the four main characters live on. I mean, it's an upscale retirement, 55-plus active living community, and they bust through the stereotypes. They smoke weed. They are morally complex. They are sexually active. They play pinochle. They listen to Marvin Gaye. They dance. They attend the climate marches. I mean, they are very active and very engaged in their life. They have past, and they are still grappling with their past. I mean, they don't become, on the one hand, these indomitable sages who know everything and are always dispensing wisdom to the younger generation, nor are they these feeble people sitting in rocking chairs eating applesauce.
They're living their life, Diane. And you actually wrote this book and were inspired by people in your real life to do this. So this isn't just made up. This is not fiction. This is very reflective of what's actually happening.
It is very reflective of my generation, of my peers, and a reaction against, I mean, my husband and I were, stopped by the police. He had something expired, I forget what. And he took he took his license back and then came back. And when he came back, I guess once he recognized his age, he was talking much louder, much slower. Okay, now, and I was insulted. Like, just because now he sees his age, does this mean we can't hear? We can't comprehend? I mean, the good news is that we didn't get a ticket, but just that the way that people who are, once you know somebody's age, then your attitude changes, your whole reaction changes, and I love what Debbie said earlier about how some people improve.
Yeah.
I mean, as we age, we actually become. It's been my experience, the experience of my sisters. I have 4 sisters who are all over 60. They don't mind me saying, and I mean, we are actually becoming more authentic, becoming more passionate about our causes and the things that we do. We're becoming more the people who we actually are, not less. And I just wrote our agenda. I mean, I had fun with the book because these people, they do break all stereotypes, but just to make it feel more normal for what it's like to be 60, 65, 70. I mean, it is, as Debbie has said, it's another phase of life, but it's certainly not the end, as many of the callers have all verbalized.
And I want to say thank you so much. That was Diane McKinney-Whetstone, a celebrated novelist and storyteller whose latest book, Our Gen, dives into the vibrant lives of residents in an upscale 55-plus community, breaking old stereotypes. Thank you so much, Diane McKinney-Whetstone, for being on Studio 2.
Thanks for having me.
And so, Debbie, I gotta, talk about this whole industry that has sort of built up around aging and the beauty industry. There's so many industries. This is billions of dollars to help people sort of hide their aging, try to reverse their aging, slow their aging. There's so many things, from hair color to supplements to all sorts of things. Can you talk about sort of this pressure, right, to not just be, and specifically for women, they want you to look like you were 25, even though you may be 55.
Yeah. Absolutely. This whole anti-aging industry makes me a little bit crazy. And this whole notion that you should look 20 when you're 50. I mean, it's preposterous. And, there are these phrases that every wrinkle someone has is a testament to their past and their capacity to overcome challenge. And, I think there are real problems for normalizing an artificial look. And if someone chooses to have plastic surgery or Botox, of course, that's absolutely their right. But I think what we want to do is change the world so that people don't feel they have to look 20 years younger to get ahead. And I say that because we know there's tremendous ageism in hiring, right?
Yes.
There are women who are divorced at 50 who need to get a job. And we know that they won't be hired if they look older, right? We know that ageism is pervasive, and you're more likely to experience ageism if you look older, right? That's the signal that triggers people to be ageist. So we need to make sure that our employers are not ageist and our media is not, and that we treat people well no matter how they look, because we don't want to make people feel that they have to look young or else they're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
And again, no judgment for those who choose to use artificial means, but we shouldn't be forced to do so just to be able to put food on our tables and to have a full and rewarding life.
Yeah. Danielle says online, we are living healthier lives than our parents, mostly because of information and preventative medicine. This has changed my idea of aging. I am older than Blanche Devereaux, Golden Girls, and I'm still confused by that. A lot of people see that, the reference. I think our producer Debbie was like, what? They're only in their 50s? Because the idea of a middle-aged woman in the 80s, totally different. I want to bring in a caller. We have Carrie from Chester County on the line. Carrie, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Hi, my comment, Jerry, is that this is a really interesting conversation. And I want to say I am 74 years old. I'm very fortunate. I'm very healthy, and I maintain that health. I work out. I have a trainer now because I'm going into a new, in a decade, right? I worked till I was 71 and a half. And my last job that I got after I got released from the prior one, I got at 63, and I was told I could never get a job at 63. All that being said, I'm very fortunate. I'm financially secure. I still go through bouts of depression.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that's in my family, and even though I have all these great things going for me, I still have to fight that. And why? Well, I don't have enough friends. I have reconnected with people that I grew up with on the same street, same row house, right? and she's a dear cousin, and that has really helped me out. But I've had problems with my sibling, my only sister, serious problems. And what I'm trying to get to is it's hard to make friends. And it's hard to reach out and really make friends at this age. Very difficult. And I have a partner, too.
And Carrie, we got to leave it there because we only got a couple minutes. But can you wrap it up in one sentence for me?
Well, my question is, what do you do about those things that can get you down, even when you've got so many things going?
Yeah, thank you so much, Carrie from Chester County. There are so many layers to this, right? And so can you provide a brief comment to Carrie from Chester County on that? Like, because you may be doing well, you may be healthy, but it does change how you make friends. All of these things, your community changes as you age.
Absolutely. Carrie's absolutely right. And there are some challenges that come with aging. One is parental care. If you're caring for a parent and maybe squabbling with your siblings, if your spouse or partner has health problems. So the reality of aging can be difficult, right? There are a lot of these factors. And, the main way we manage stress is with social support. And that's hard if you feel you don't have sufficient numbers of friends. But I think there are other ways to find new friends that don't have to be your bestie, but it can be a Facebook group or a virtual group that's a support group that focuses on very specific issues, right? And so that way you can talk about caregiving challenges or grappling with depression or swapping ideas. And so just because you don't have friends next door doesn't mean there's not a whole universe of people who can be a source of support, even if they're not your bestie.
And Debbie, I want to get this last question in as we wrap up, because I realize that there's a whole anti-aging activism that is going on, and you only have about 40 seconds, but just sort of how do we fight ageism? And I didn't get to Carol from Doylestown, who was going to give us some advice on this, but I really want people to sort of help change the narrative. How do we take steps in our lives to train people to try to redefine what it means, and so that we can have a more inclusive society as we get to more people being older in our society? And you have 30 seconds.
I think one thing is call it out, just as we would call out racism or sexism, call out ageism. And when you see it happening, hear it happening, letting people know that if they're fortunate enough, they too will someday be 65 or 70 years old. So we need to lead with empathy and recognizing the many strengths that older adults have and hold up images of that successful aging.
I love it. Well, you know what, Debbie? I really appreciated this conversation. I had a ball talking to you. Deborah Carr is a professor of sociology at Boston University, author of Aging in America, former professor at Rutgers, so has that local tie. Debbie, thank you so much for spending this hour with us.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
And thank you to everybody who called in. We didn't get to Carol from Doylestown or Maria from Ambler, but we recognize you. Thank you so much for calling, and everybody who made a comment. And thank you, of course, to our producers, Debbie Builder, Paige Murray Besser, and Andreas Copes. Thanks to Mike Schiffler, our visual producer, to Al Banks and Tina Calicay, who engineered today's show. Our executive producer, who did the live chat with me earlier, is Kevin McCory. And from Studio 2 here at WHYY in Philadelphia, I'm Cherry Gregg. Thank you so much for joining me. Tomorrow on Studio 2, municipal workers in Philadelphia are on strike. That means closed libraries and pools, reduced hours at rec centers, and a whole lot of trash. The city's largest union is at a stalemate with Mayor Sherrell Parker over wage increases. But as garbage starts to pile up, how long will an agreement take? We'll get the latest on the sanitation workers strike tomorrow, and we want to hear your comments as well. That's on Studio 2 tomorrow at noon. But coming up next on WHYY, Here and Now. Stick with us. Lots to come. See you tomorrow.